Hello everyone and welcome to Empowering the Conscious Business Evolution Talk with me, Antonina Manev, for some fresh, thought-provoking and liberating conversations about inspiring the sparks of innovation and evolution and growing a bigger and a wider world of ethically successful and consciously evolving business environment. For those who tune in for the first time, I'm the founder of Visions Inspire Strategic Business Growth Consultancy. As a business strategist, my focus is on turning visions into profitable businesses, be it for startups or established businesses. So in my area of work, evolving the business consciousness is a key element. You can find out more about my inspiring work by visiting the website www.visionsinspire.com. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel or like my Facebook page or connect on LinkedIn with me. Business owners work with me, looking to increase usually their business cash flow and profits and create a secure financial future so they fully enjoy a greater lifestyle and balance. However, along the way, the main obstacle appears to be the uncomfortable mindset of conformity, which accepts limitations in business making and development, or even growing in order to fit in an old custom conventional framework of business making that holds them back, and all that at the expense of their true identity. But how we even start to break up these frames? Well, we'll have to try. In my interviews, video or audio, I will be introducing you to exceptional business leaders, owners, and creators who have reached great success in what they do, not because they worked hard to fit in, but by challenging the status quo and constantly innovating themselves and their businesses, by searching back to their authentic roots to follow the person, business, environment connection, and by taking approaches of consciously evolving to align with a higher social and earth value through their creativity, identity, and co-creative forward thinking. So be prepared. All my guests have left valuable tips and inspirational words of wisdom for you to take and do your best to outshine the conventional and grow yourself and business aligned with higher values. All their interviews are playing on the Visions Inspire YouTube podcast channel. Happy listening and happy learning and growing. My guest today is a fascinating person with extraordinary life, deep and wide wisdom, who converses in several languages, who achieved high professional success in business and in working with corporate leaders in UK and across countries over many years. Welcome, Helen Guinness, and thank you for joining me in this conversation today.
My pleasure.
Helen, I'm delighted to have you today. We've had many meetings in the previous months and we found so many common points of discussion. Would you like to tell our listeners more about you?
How much more would you like me to say? You know that I have had a fairly long and varied and interesting life. I'm happy to talk about my business, and maybe I could say that I was brought up in 4 different countries, that my education didn't really begin formally until I was 11. My career pathway was not clear for me until 1981. And so it is since 1981 that I've developed and grown the business that I'm in now. The last year has influenced my future in the sense that I feel it's time to let go of the past. It's time to look at the future anew and to keep an open mind as to how things are going to develop. So in simple terms, I'm a transformational coach. I do also design and deliver programs. and I have worked in businesses as far-reaching and ranging as Pepsi-Cola and Winchester Prison. So that gives an idea of the range, everything in between. My commitment is always to improving performance when working in a business. In order to improve performance, one needs to remove the obstacles to that pathway. And on the whole, I find that the principal obstacles, whether it's on an individual basis or an organizational basis, are in the mind, are mindsets. Organizations have mindsets just as much as individuals do. And organizations are seldom aware of their mindsets. Individuals are too, actually. But what is fascinating to me is the organizational mindset that is dysfunctional. They're the ones that excite me. They're the ones that I feel, oh yes, let me at it. So transformational coaching is about transforming mindsets. It's about assisting individuals, teams, groups, board members, companies to shift themselves from one way of thinking to another way of thinking that is more powerful and more effective and more consistent with the goal they want to achieve. How am I doing?
You're doing great. I know you speak Croatian.
I do.
And I remember our first salutation was Dobar den.
Dobar dan.
And it is amazing the insights that you're sharing here, because it always starts from the individual and that mindset of that individual. Whether they're a leader, now they have a greater impact on other people, and it is important for them to become aware of their limitations in a way, which always derive from the personal experiences of all of them. Can I just read something from your LinkedIn profile?
I don't have it to hand.
I've got it. I've got it in front of me.
Okay, you go ahead.
Okay, I love the way you're using the phrase of Charles Dubois. The important thing is this: to be able at any moment to sacrifice what you are for what you could become. Would you like to tell us more about why you chose that kind of phrase?
I chose it because it illustrates transformation. In order for you to become what you could become, potentially, or indeed what you might want to become, you need to let go of something. And the letting go sometimes takes courage. We enjoy our comfort zones. We like to stay in our habitual patterns of behavior because that's what we know and that's where we feel safe. And in extreme situations, we believe that they are right, but they're not necessarily right. And if you start going down the path of right, wrong, you get very stuck in a black and white and potentially conflicting position. So it isn't about right or wrong. It's about what works or what doesn't work. So Charles Dubois inspired me with that quote many, many, many years ago when I discovered for myself that if I was going to reach my potential to be who I aspired to be, who I wanted to be, and who indeed I believed myself capable of being, I was going to need to give up the person I was being. So, and we're talking here about being, not doing.
Yes.
There's a clear distinction between the two. I know, we call ourselves human beings, but frankly, most of the time we're human doings. And the doing tends to cover up the being. We like to be busy. We like to produce. We like to achieve. We like success. And all this is human doing. But take a moment. Who are you in the matter? Who are you being when you're doing all this doing? you may not be being the person who would be consistent with the doing that you want to do.
I can see it from that perspective. Yes. I think, yeah, it makes sense. It makes huge sense because most of the time we hide behind our pretended actions to look the way they expect us to look so that we are accepted, but inside we are completely different, and we're trying to hide this so that we don't disrupt that process of being liked. And I think it is a kind of a defense mechanism of everyone. Personally, I have been in that position, and very often I am, even now during that. It is totally out of my comfort zone. And I try to behave as if I've always done this. I've always done this. And I told you, I was pacing just before the recording. I was pacing back and forth, trying to gather that courage. Yes, and I also, when I work with businesses, I find out that they too, even with their businesses, they are trying to portray themselves in the box that will be accepted by their customers or by their profession, and they're covering all that pure, beautiful authenticity and identity, which is the uniqueness of their existence, and because they're afraid that they will not be accepted in a way.
So whilst you were pacing up and down, gathering the courage and the nerve to step into this conversation, you were being your commitment to business evolution. That took precedence over any other excuse you could have produced to not do it. So, I mean, you're a great example, actually, because who you are being shines from you. Your commitment is so strong and so pure and clear. So I honor you for that.
Thank you. Even now, as you were saying those words to me, inside I was like, oh my God, is that good? Is that bad? How do I compare? Validation. It is a constant earning to be validated in a positive way, of course, because no one likes criticism, or at least I don't enjoy it. I do draw conclusions from it, but I don't enjoy it. And I remember I asked one day my father, why? What is wrong with me? I can't stand criticism. And he just turned and he said, there is no intelligent person on that earth that would enjoy criticism. So it is part of it. So be part of it.
But there is a difference between criticism and feedback. Criticism is personalized. Generally, it's negative. It has negative connotations in the sense that you're doing something wrong. Whereas feedback is something we learn from. And we all need feedback. We all need to know that we're doing the right thing or that we're doing what works, as opposed to not. And, feedback is really hard to come by. People don't like giving feedback and people don't like listening to it. And yet it's the source of gold.
I agree with that. And very often, and I suppose it is the same with you. You do ask your clients for a feedback, and you ask it in a manner of expecting that you will hear something that based on which you can improve, you can do things better, you can meet greater expectations in a future relationship, probably.
But it's also important to remember that positive feedback will reinforce and validate what you're doing well. And we need more of that. You see, the tendency is for us to go to the negative always. That's what we've grown up with. That's the culture. 80% of the feedback we receive is negative in nature in one form or another. So there isn't a lot of room for the positive stuff. But you want to know what you're doing right, for goodness sake, just as much as you want to know what you could improve on. Otherwise, what's the point of any of it? You can then build on what you do well and improve on what you do less well.
So I suppose you've come across many business leaders in your experience that had to grow and evolve from one state of mind into another mindset so that they can improve. Has it been very hard? Have you had any difficult cases, call them cases, but relationships, let's put it that way?
Yes, and I've usually enjoyed those the most.
Aha.
Because I do enjoy a challenge. For instance, it depends on the culture of the organization. So I don't know whether I'm allowed to mention organizations. I can, can't I? I don't think it's confidential. So the Ministry of Defense has a particular culture, and it has a militaristic attitude to leadership, if you will. I'm speaking from a few years gone by. I don't have the most recent experience.
Shall we say 20 years ago? So disclosure is open.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
So if the mindset is hierarchical, it's the same thing applied to various police forces that I worked in. If the mindset is hierarchical, if the culture is hierarchical, it's very, very difficult for someone lower in the hierarchy to challenge or feed back to someone higher in the hierarchy.
Almost impossible, actually.
Yeah. However, it produces extraordinary results if you can find a way to do it. If it's not perceived as criticism or insubordination, or challenge in the wrong sense of the word. But the most effective leaders, the most inspirational leaders are those who are open to feedback all the time. So the culture can be tricky. I've worked in a number of law firms. There is a particular culture in law firms. Leadership actually doesn't exist, or it didn't then. It was much more a case of we have a group of partners and we run the company. Well,
they're very competitive between themselves, very competitive.
It's also about understanding the concept of leadership as a notion, as an energy, if you like, not necessarily as a designation.
Mm.
So the body of leadership in a partnership, for instance, needs to be aligned. It needs to be inspirational. It needs to be future focused. It needs to have a clear vision. It needs to communicate that vision, and so on and so on. So whether it's a group of people or a single individual, those elements need to be in place, because the rest of the people in the organization need to be able to engage with that, see themselves in it, and see what's in it for them, in order to function in a way that is consistent with the future development and growth of the business.
Absolutely right. So how did you, in a way, evolve in business, and what were your main drivers to evolve?
Well, in the early days, my main drivers were to break away from the then fashionable so-called management consultancy culture. When I first started running my company, everything was management. There was no leadership. There was no coaching. Didn't exist in this country.
When was that? Would you like to?
1989.
Wow.
You couldn't talk about leadership. If you asked somebody what is leadership, they would say it's management. If you ask them what is management, they'll say it's leadership.
Dictatorship.
There was no distinction between leadership and management. None. Nowadays, it's a very different thing.
Mm.
And coaching, of course, didn't exist as a concept in the UK. It was imported from the United States and
yes,
so forth. I mean, it existed, of course, in the field of sport. And there are certain parallels with the field of sport that are entirely consistent with coaching today. It's future focused, it's performance driven and so on if you're working in an organization. But it is also about personal development and growth. And in order to change your mindset, you do need to understand, as far as I'm concerned anyway, or it's pretty helpful to understand where your existing mindset comes from and why you hold that mindset. And it may have served you very well until today, but times are changing. The world is changing very rapidly. So your current mindset is not going to hold good even in 3 months' time, let alone 6 months, a year, or 5 years. So the transformational element of my work is an ongoing ribbon of energy throughout all my coaching that we need to be open to changing our mindsets almost daily. Yeah. Especially as we have for the last 14 months or so been living in a state of not knowing. And that is terribly challenging. Human beings do not like not to know. It's enormously challenging. It's enormously stressful. And when we can't find a reason, we sometimes often invent one because it makes us feel better. We feel safer having a reason or an excuse or an explanation. We don't like not knowing. And yet, for me, and I think, a number of other people I know, not knowing is exciting. It's the opening to something new. So one of my watchwords is curiosity. Stay curious all the time.
I like that. Stay curious. So how do you find the current business climate?
I think it's very disjointed at the moment. I think that people have had to adapt extremely quickly to different circumstances. The obvious ones are working from home as opposed to working in the office. We've had to adapt to a changing marketplace. I mean, you've only got to look at certain industries like the catering industry, the hospitality industry. Yes. We've had to be inventive in the moment. We've had to be enormously entrepreneurial. There are endless examples of people being entrepreneurial throughout the pandemic, and good for them. I really honor them for doing that. So we're sitting on waves that are moving all the time. The ship is on the move. We're not in a state of calm. I think we're also in a state of inquiry, of wondering what's going to come next, how we're going to fix this, how we're going to sort that, how are we going to operate. It's a state of flux, if I could put it that way.
Mm. Well, what I've noticed is that when everything stopped, in a way, people couldn't even find excuses. They when I say people, I also mean businesses. They couldn't find excuses. There was nothing to go back to compare in history of anything like that. So some of them completely stopped because it took them longer to reach that state of mind to search or to find other ways. Others very quickly opened the doors to the unknown and started putting their stepstones themselves to reach to the customers, to reach to the community, to reach out to or reopen in a way their business. And I found this fascinating because when we are put in a situation of no compare, all you have left is what is inside you. What have you got insight, what capacities, what skills, what knowledge, and then all that gets combined and you make a step forward in a way. And that was the moment when people started, some of them lost their jobs and they had no other way. They had to look inside and draw from all their life experiences, knowledge, gifts, if you like, they've never pursued before, to shape them in a identity matching way so that they can start a business, maybe.
Absolutely. And I think that, resilience is the new byword. It's the new watchword. I'm getting endless emails, clips, vlogs, videos on resilience, webinars, books. It's just everywhere. Resilience is vital. We need to be resilient. We need to find ways of being resilient in order to survive. And when a subject becomes the latest thing, fashionable, it starts to close down. So resilience, yes, by all means, but keep an open mind for what's next, what's beyond resilience. What about creativity? What about innovation? What about diversification? What about transformation? What about thinking differently?
Yeah.
Whereas, what about curiosity? We can be endlessly curious about everything and derive enormous knowledge from that. So, yes, sure, we need to be resilient. And I'd like to throw something else in here, which is relevant to your question. The state of health of the nation. Leave aside COVID and the pandemic, but the fallout and the consequences from that. Mm-hmm. State of mental health, the emotional health, psychological health. It's very uneven. People have been very, very stressed, and I think sometimes not even noticing how stressed they've been. When you live in the unknown, it causes stress. We've been living with the constant threat of disease or death daily for 14 months. Mm. Inevitably, that causes stress. Inevitably. So resilience in the form of managing stress and finding ways to reduce stress. Yes, definitely. We all need that.
And I think many people have found their own ways. So they discovered I call them the newly found comforts and pleasures to enjoy and appreciate what they have, be it environment, be it in their homes, be it in the relationships with their families. Of course, there are some negatives sometimes, and I've heard a lot of them, because when people are shut together between four walls of a house, things may take a negative course sometimes.
I don't mean to sound either patronizing or arrogant or short-sighted about the huge challenges that people have faced, confinement being one of them, of course. I was perhaps being a little bit more generalist when I was commenting about stress. Mm.
But I think people had a chance, and I'm sure they will never, ever forget that. There is no going back. But they found a way to listen to what surrounds us, to listen to the nature in a way, to listen to the energy that surrounds us and tune into it and grasp what they need to do. And because because my work actually is partially about tuning into what is now and being relevant, but it is also going forward and trying to think and analyze how the society, the socium, will evolve in the next year, let's say, based on what we know now, and how the business mindsets can respond or can be prepared to respond and get ready for that, to meet those new expectations. So, what have you noticed changed in delivering your business over the past year and a half?
When you say delivering, you mean the actual coaching itself?
Yes, the actual coaching. How did you notice? What have you noticed changed? Has anything changed in a way in delivering it?
Yes, I mean, part of my job is to be a great listener, and what I mean by that is to have the ability to listen to what people don't say as much as to what they do say. So what are they keeping back behind what they're actually saying?
Yeah.
You know, we have an expression in English which is reading between the lines. And it's the similar things, like listening between the words. What's behind that? And I think that what I'm hearing is fear. I'm hearing worry, concern, insecurity. The other thing I'm hearing is need for change. People and organizations have come to a crossroad. We are sitting on the crossroad. This is a great opportunity for all of us, for the whole planet. It's a big wake-up call we've just had. It's time to review how we live our lives and to look at what's going to work for all of us and the planet in the future. So it's no longer a case of what works for me. It's a case of what works for us. So a number of people I've been talking to and coaching have come to that point in their lives. It's been prompted, if you like, triggered by the pandemic, when they're asking themselves the question, is this it? Is this all it is? You know, is this really what my life is about? Or they've come to a place where they're asking themselves, do I want to continue doing this, or do I want to do something different? And if I want to do something different, what is that going to be? And how do I go about setting it up? So it's that point of I'm wanting change, I'm needing change, and I have no clue how to move forward.
And that's where you come.
Exactly. That's where I come into it. Yeah.
So why is the need to evolve as a business, and what do you think it is brought by?
Okay, so the need for evolution in business can be brought by political changes, by financial or fiscal changes, by acts of God, by all kinds of things can affect businesses. They affect individuals and people as well, of course, but we're talking about business. So to my mind, business needs to keep an eye on what's next, not on what was. I mean, learn from the past by all means, but you need to be looking to the future. So when you think of long grass, when the wind blows, the grass bends, sometimes even down to the ground, but it never breaks. Whereas a tree with a shallow root, for instance, that is inflexible, can be wrecked by a storm or by high winds. So we're in a metaphorical state of high wind. And we need to be like the long grass. We need to have that ability to be flexible and even to enjoy it, to relish the wind and enjoy the wind. If businesses aren't staying ahead of the curve and considering what people are going to want and need at that point, they are not going to be successful in the long term.
Yeah.
You've always got to keep ahead, not necessarily in a competitive sense, but what is it that people want and need? And I think people's needs are changing. I think with the commercial hits that we've experienced recently, some other things have come into focus, like the need for housing being one of them, for instance, poverty, homelessness, and so on. And that's good, because we need to address those things. Whilst we have people in poverty, we cannot say that we are successful.
True. And I like the word flexible and adaptive, to be able to adapt constantly in a fluid state of flexibility. Always to and to know that the strength is not actually of being stoic or being firm with whatever principles you have inherited or gathered, but to always listen and be flexible and evolve. And that's the essence of the conscious evolution and the business evolution.
I think there's another element. I think there's and this is a particular bugbear of mine, I think there is a need for far, far higher levels of integrity in business. I think business has been, to date, somewhat unethical, and I'm not going to point any fingers. Lacking in integrity, and it's not doing us any good. It doesn't serve the business. It doesn't serve the people it is trying to serve. It doesn't serve those who work in the business. Integrity is about wholeness. And we don't behave with integrity a lot of the time. We really don't. Integrity is, in its wholeness, is not just about me, it's about everything else that's going on.
The community and the people and connecting them. I very much would like to throw another question that I haven't bullet pointed, but what do you think about competition and how people react when they meet competition? What have you noticed that you don't like, and what do you think could people do better in business about competition?
Well, competition on the whole is not a bad thing, because we need the drive, we need the energy, we need the motivation. Not a bad thing. Competition in a negative state of I'm going to beat you come what may, I'm afraid I don't agree with that. That's not.
It is so backwards, isn't it?
Yeah, that's not healthy competition in business anyway. I mean, on the football pitch, you have two teams. The object of the exercise is one team to beat the other team. Okay, fine. It's a game.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to exist in the business world. Competition is something to be learned from. Competition is about, if you like, staying just that one step ahead of where you are now. And if you find somebody else is doing much the same thing, great. What could you learn from them, and what can you share with them?
Exactly.
Why should competition be single-minded and closed in and tunnel vision? No. Competition can be great. It can be fun. It can be useful. It can be a learning state. Let's look at it from that point of view.
So what would be the feeling in people when if they change the word competition and change it with integration, even if they do seemingly the same things? So how about we forget the word competition and never mention and never call that interaction a competition, but we call it integration, because in this way we can open up to sharing ideas. Do you remember that saying, I have one idea, you have one idea? Actually, it was about talent. The Roman coins, they were called talents. Yeah. You have one talent, I have one talent. If you give me your talent and I give you my talent, you will have one coin, I will have one coin, but we're going to end up with 2 talents each.
Yes, exactly.
So the same is with ideas. We share ideas, but because we are unique, we will always come up of a different combination of these ideas, number one person and number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've described it beautifully. I'm not sure that I could add to that particularly. The idea of sharing, the idea of cooperative working, the idea of integration, the idea of learning from each other. I mean, I do actually believe in the Marxist principle of people should do what they're good at, loosely speaking. So find what you're good at, build on that, and then find someone who's good at the things you're not good at and work with them.
Yeah, by all means.
Integrate. You know, if you dovetail these skills, and there are areas where people are reasonably good at a number of different things, fine, but what is it you excel at? And what is it that you could do with that you don't excel at? And find the missing piece, if you like. I've got a profile tool that I use, and I've done it on with teams a number of times. And it's so exciting because it shows up where the strengths are in the team and where the weaknesses are very vividly. And I was working with a group of people not that long ago using this profile, and one of the things that was missing for them was marketing and selling. Right? And I laid out the profile, and it was like a bolt of lightning. It was so clear. There was no marketing and selling skill in the organization. None. So, okay, you've got to buy it in then. If you're not going to do it, you'll have to buy it in.
It's amazing. I so much enjoy working with businesses because just like you, I find and I do enjoy the great challenges, but I enjoy everyone, to witness the transformation that happens within a business, their mindset and the way they end up, being more profitable in an ethical way. And that's where my focus is, and that's where my pleasure is. So how do you find the new ideas in business making resonate with the wider communities in terms of challenges, acceptance, inclusiveness, and responses, and mostly about resisting? Do you find people still being resistant to new business making ideas?
Less so. Very much less so. And bear in mind, I live in Brighton, which is a hive of originality and ingenuity and entrepreneurship.
It is.
So I see a lot of wonderful ideas coming to fruition around me. And I think people are less resistant. And always people are going to want to stick to what they know, because if it ain't broke, why fix it? God knows how many times I've heard that. If I had £1 for every time, I'd be rich. But it's not about if it ain't broke. It's about what if we could do better? What if we could be more successful? After all, we've moved from the abacus to the calculator to the mobile phone calculator all right, it's taken us hundreds of years, but the speed with which technology changes,
it is amazing.
It's extraordinary. And it's wonderful and miraculous in many ways. There are some downsides, but don't get me started on that.
Oh, no.
So I think there is less resistance. I think there's more willingness. I think that I do actually think that the younger generation are more aware of the need for integrity, for wholeness, for a global perspective, for a global conscience, if you will. They are interested in investing in the future. They're interested in organizations that can give them a vision they can buy into and see themselves operating within for a period of time. They want to feel they belong. It's not just about the money. Money is now third or fourth down their list of priorities. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning here is that authenticity is vital in my view. If we are not being authentic, if we're not being real, we're hiding something. Inevitably. Now, we might be hiding something that is not necessarily harmful, but it causes suspicion. And even if it's not immediately visible, we detect it.
Yes.
And I've done a lot of work on body language, for instance. And we sense very quickly when a message is being delivered in a way that is not consistent or authentic. It's the same with organizations. It leaks out. We can sense it. So integrity and authenticity, if you're being real, if you're being straight, if you are in integrity, you're going to be reaching a higher level of what would we call it? A higher level of sorry, I'm lost for words, which is unusual. A higher level of humanity, let's call it that.
A higher level of consciousness.
Yes.
A higher level of humanity, consciousness, if there is such a combination of words, but that's what counts.
Yeah, well, it works.
And in that line, can I ask you, can you tell more about, we're pressing with time, but I so much want you to tell us more about the wisdom exchange that you set up earlier this year.
Oh, right. Well, the wisdom exchange is an opportunity for people to come together to discuss a topic without any conclusion required. I was bored, frankly. I was bored with my own thoughts, my own mind. I read a lot and I do a lot of thinking, but I thought I need some intellectual stimulation here. And I'm a bit cheesed off with my own intellectual stimulation. So this idea just sprang into my mind. And I thought, wisdom exchange, let's exchange wisdom. Let's look at the whole subject of wisdom and how it relates to various areas of life, business, the world, whatever. Last night we had a meeting, for instance, the subject was guilt. Does guilt serve any purpose or not?
Interesting.
What is the difference between guilt and conscience? And how does guilt link to wisdom? I'm not going to answer any of those questions, but it proved to be a very meaty and interesting discussion. And we're in the wisdom exchange, we're not chasing an answer, we're opening up and deepening the conversation.
I know that kind of movement that you set up just out of boredom is growing rapidly, and I would like you to point people to tell people how they can join, how they can contact you. But before we do that, can you give me one specific tip of wisdom from your vast experiences in life and business would you share to inspire a business owner, a brave startup, or a passionate entrepreneur listening to us right now?
Worship failure, worship mistakes.
Worship failure, worship mistakes.
That's where.
Why?
Because that's what you learn from.
I agree. I just had to ask why. It's painful.
No, well, just bear in mind that, again, failure and mistakes have negative connotations. But how do you learn to ride a bicycle if you don't fall off it?
It still hurts.
Well, it might, but not always. Not always. I mean, how do you learn to swim if you don't sink a little bit?
Correct.
And struggle. It's so what I mean by that is this is transforming the mindset of failure and mistakes into learning opportunities. There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you. Now, let's come back to, can you tell how people can find you? Can you give a website or an email to contact you? Because I know after listening to that show, many people will ask, where is the wisdom exchange? Where can we find Helen Guinness?
So you can go to my website or my LinkedIn page. My website is helenguinness.com. Very simple. My email is hello@helenguinness.com.
Brilliant.
And I would just say that Guinness is spelt with 2 N's and 2 S's, like the beer.
Like the beer. Helen Guinness, like the beer. And as vast as life. Thank you. Thank you, Helen, for joining me in this conversation today and for sharing with the listeners and me your wisdom and guidance. It was utter pleasure. Thank you so much. And that was your inspiration to continue empowering your conscious business evolution today. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope our conversations will help you take your own steps toward innovating and evolving as a conscious business by making choices for the benefit of people, communities, and environment. If you have any questions to my guests, I will leave their contact details in the description of this post. If you'd like to come to the show and share your wisdom, you're more than welcome. Please write to me to Antonina@visionsinspire.com. But definitely have a listen to all previous interviews and do subscribe to the Visions Inspire YouTube channel for my next show for more inspiration on being part of our conscious business evolution together. Please give Visions Inspire your like on Facebook and follow on Twitter and Instagram. And do share with others to listen, spread the word, grow the knowledge. That's the spirit of the conscious business evolution. Till next time, from me, Antonina Manev, your business growth strategist, turning visions into profitable businesses, and always here to empower the conscious business evolution. Thank you, and till next time.